Hey, what's up, everybody? Championship Leadership Podcast, and I'm excited today. We have Daniel Garza, and I had some time to spend with Daniel on his podcast, actually just yesterday, the Put It Together podcast. And Daniel's an entertainer, an HIV advocate, as well as a Reiki master. Did I say that right?
Reiki master, yes.
Reiki, yeah. So thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's really cool when you can swap interviews with people. And you were awesome on the show yesterday.
Oh,
I can't wait for my listeners to hear your story. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, same for me here today to get to flip the script on you a little bit and take the host seat and put you in the hot seat. So
it doesn't happen often, and
yeah.
Not to boost your ego or anything, but not a lot of people get to do it, which is
I love it. So all right, let's get started. Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. So I always ask this question: what comes to mind for you? What do you think of when you hear championship leadership? What's that mean to you?
Championship leadership. Okay, first of all, to your listeners, I'm overly sarcastic most of the time, so I will clarify when I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
But the first thing that really comes to me, and I think because we're here to be honest, and I think a championship leader is somebody who has gotten their hands dirty, has been through the trenches, came out on the other side, and is willing to show others how to get through it, or that you can get through it. And I think it's really the titles. For most of us, I think I'm kind of like, oh no, that's not me. But I think in my 48 years and the work that I've done, it definitely resonates now. It's like, especially when folks like you. I mean, I've looked over your page and the conversation we had. For somebody like at your level and with your experience and your life experience to seek me out a little bit, that kind of reinforced like, hey, yeah, I deserve to be at the big folks table now. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, when you're talking about what that is to you, I mean, yeah, it kind of resonates with what I know of you and how you came up. So maybe share with the listeners, just like as I'm on your podcast telling you my story, like, yeah, what is your story? Where did you come from? Getting your hands dirty, adversity, different things happening in your life, and how you're able to continue to, like a championship leader does, to move through that and to get to where you are today.
Wow. Okay. I am not gonna lie that while I was in the shower and getting ready for this, I was nervous. I'm like, I'm not sure where we're gonna go with this,
Yeah.
But and I'm a talker, but I'll try to make this. So I was born in Mexico, 1970. We moved to Texas when I was 3 years old, so I'm a Texas baby actually. Grew up in Dallas. I think my first challenges came up when I was molested as a child, and that kind of stuck with me for a long time. I was a victim of bullying, which the first time that I took charge of my life was I was in Dallas. I was being bullied and molested by the same kids. And I decided that I wasn't going to go to junior high like that. I wasn't going to be a victim. So I decided to go back to Mexico to live with my sister and go to school there. My parents are older now, and they've never actually heard the story from me of why I wanted to leave.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I took charge of my life. Not that things didn't come back and take control. I was heavy into drugs and alcohol. I started drinking when I was like 16. I started doing drugs when I was 20. Those were the first years of like really trying to figure out who I was, dealing with a lot of stuff that I didn't deal with as a kid. A lot of hate, a lot of anger. I was never a negative or mean person, but I had a lot of inner anger, and I blamed myself for things that I had no control over.
Mm-hmm.
I finally sobered up when I was 36. I went to rehab, Bay Area Recovery Center in Dickinson, Texas. So if anybody from there is listening, that's where I to this day say I went in it on June 21st, 2007. That's when I sobered up. Um, that's the summer I feel I became a man. I was
Mm-hmm.
36 years old, and I was like, okay, now I know, because they completely broke me down. They tore me apart. There was My excuses had no shadows to hide in, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Like anything I threw out, there was always somebody say, "Bull."
Uh-huh.
That's a wall you're hiding behind of. Come out from behind the wall.
Yeah.
And sobered up. I've been clean ever since. So 12 years now going. And um, going back a little bit, and when I was 30, when I was about to turn 30, I was diagnosed with AIDS. I was almost dying. I weighed 110 pounds. Uh,
Wow.
the the priest came into my room at the hospital to talk to me, and I remember telling him, like, I was raised Catholic, and I'm like, "Do you have a note from God saying that I'm dying?" And he's like, "Well, no, it doesn't work like that." I said, "Well, then when you do get a message from God, come back. Otherwise, get the F out of my room." He never came back. So, spoiler alert, I did not die.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
still
still
here.
here, right?
And but family that I hadn't seen in a long time came to visit and to say goodbye. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to go yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then 15 years later, on May 5th, 2015, on Cinco de Mayo, that's how Mexican I am. I
Yeah.
was I was diagnosed with anal cancer, and it definitely put a spin in my life. I was a couple of years into my relationship with my boyfriend now, and uh, again, spoiler alert, I did not die. I
Yeah.
almost did a couple of times.
Yeah.
There were a
Yeah.
couple of near misses. In On April 1st, April Fool's Day, 2016 is when I had my colostomy surgery. Uh, and now I have a colostomy, and it's permanent. We're not reversing it. There's no way to reverse it without
Uh-huh.
having to go on diapers for the rest of my life. And I'm not ready for diapers yet.
Yeah.
Um, so here I am. And then in between those spots, 4th of July was when I ended my treatment. My last day of chemo was 4th of July. So I
Oh,
tell people that now they throw a parade for me every year. Uh,
yeah,
the,
that's awesome.
the, the theme is always red, white, and blue. And um, while I was recouping from cancers, when I became a Reiki master, um, I'm still going strong on national campaigns for HIV advocacy. My main goal in that is education for high school, college, and university students. Um, but yeah, that's a little bit of who I am.
So, well, and talk about you know, entertainer is the first on
Oh,
your list of
yes.
resumes. We haven't really talked about that. Like, how does that all come into play inside of that story there?
Yeah. So 2005, I'm living in Houston, and I'm working at an HIV service agency. And George Iniguez, who we're still friends, was a producer, director, home Houston Media Source, which is a local cable channel and really big in Houston,
Mm-hmm.
came to the agency looking for somebody bilingual to talk about HIV and AIDS and educate him. And it became so overwhelming that he was like, "Why don't you just come on the show and do it?" And my claim to fame on that was I was on cable access with a dildo in my hand and a condom, showing people how to put on a condom,
Oh,
and
wow.
it just blew people's minds that I was doing that.
Yeah.
So I started. Then they brought me in to be a co-host. So my career on TV started in Houston Media Source
Okay.
as a host. Um, did drama in high school like a lot of people. My first commercial was in Houston for Conn's Furniture. I was buying a lawnmower. I know, it's very stereotypical, but I was buying a lawnmower in the commercial, and some people recognized me. Then I moved to LA, and I moved to Laguna Beach, and uh, the idea was to come in and settle down in Laguna and just kind of see my old age come true. But then
Uh-huh.
I really got busy acting, and then the podcast came out in 2012. Um, and then I just really started doing stand-up comedy a year ago.
Yeah.
So November 3rd of last year was my first big show.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Uh,
the HIV advocate, right? So you are HIV positive,
correct.
and now, like, what made you want to be a part of the movement to help educate and, be a leader in that advocacy? Like, yeah, what made you want to do that? I can only imagine that it would be tough. Number one, you get the news and you're like, probably a lot of uncertainty, not really knowing what it means, figuring that out, getting through all of that, and then being like, hey, like, I want to make a difference here. So yeah, talk to us about that. I think.
Sure. Well, I was in Houston. It was the end of September, and I just kind of gave it the 26th as the date that I went to the hospital. And I was 29. I knew, like, in the back of my head, I knew that kind of what was up. Um, but I went to the hospital, and this will show to who I am. The doctor gives me the news in front of my family, and my two questions were, will my hair grow back because I was losing my hair, and I had to be wheelchaired into the hospital, and can I walk out? And the doctor was like, yeah, but like, you have AIDS. And I'm like, because I was diagnosed with AIDS when I was diagnosed.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, there's medication, there's support groups. That's all. They're like, yeah, that's great. Will my hair come back? And can I walk out of here?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. And I really do credit my lack of taking it serious to my survival, because I didn't focus on being sick. I focused on, okay, what's coming? Like, let's get to it.
Yeah.
My family, coming from a Latino, basically first generation, very conservative Catholic family, there was no talk about sex. There was definitely no talk about sexuality. So HIV was, everybody's going to get it. The whole family's going to be infected. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
So I started volunteering at the agency. I moved to South Texas, down to McAllen, Texas, and I started volunteering and realized that there wasn't that much information for Latinos in Spanish.
Yeah.
And I made it a point to become the person that ordered all the pamphlets and stuff, and I would bring them home and educate my family, because I needed them to know that I wasn't contagious.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to kill them. So my very first advocacy target was my family.
Yeah.
Get them on board. And once they did, and I realized the potential that, it's going to sound egotistical, but the power that my voice had, because I wasn't going to leave it up to somebody else to educate my family, but what power I had as an HIV positive Latino man to go out there and inform people. And then I started through the agency, Valley AIDS Council, going out and talking to folks in groups. And I realized how impactful it is when somebody who is going through what you're talking about makes an impact on other people. So, like, it would probably not be received well if I went in and talked to I don't know, females about pregnancy and the steps too. They're probably looking at me like, what the hell do you know about that?
Yeah. Right.
Right. But if I go and talk to you about being an HIV Latino man in his 40s in a relationship, one of those factors would connect with you. And you'll pay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you go back to, like, thinking about a champion leadership. I think it was finding the strength in my voice and how I could make it stronger. And then over the years, I belonged to different organizations: the Ryan White Planning Council in Houston, the Laguna Beach HIV Advisory Committee, Now I'm part of Radiant Health Centers. I'm part of the board. I'm a board member. Then I got recruited over to Positively Fearless, which is a national campaign. Y'all can find that online. I'm really proud of that project.
Yeah.
So over the years, it's just evolved. As I've evolved, my story has changed because different components get added. But yeah, and I mean, HIV is not going anywhere. It's going to stick with me for life.
Yeah.
So as long as it's there, I'll keep talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that don't or aren't willing to. So it's just awesome that you have that in you to go out and communicate and spread the message and educate and to do that, to be that leader there. So you have a lot of things going on. Like how do you got like time to do anything for yourself?
I make the time.
Yeah.
It's, if you make me cry while we're talking, that's it, Nate Bailey. That's it, Nate Bailey. We're through. We talked a little bit about it yesterday when we talked on my show. When I was diagnosed in 2000, I was given disability.
Yeah.
And back then it was lifetime disability because that's how it felt. Over the last few years, a lot of people who are HIV positive have been going through a review to see where you are health-wise. I was recently taken off of disability. So they're like, okay, you're, it is only in the last couple of months that I've really like taken time to look at how full my life is and how I need to stop and just slow down once in a while. Just like, for those of you who are listening, if you want to follow me on Facebook, which is where I do most of my stuff, yesterday evening, two of my best friends and I went down to the beach to have gelato and just sit there and laugh and look at people, and we took some pictures, and I don't know. I think you God, it's so hard to be on this side of the conversation. I'm learning. I was a workaholic because I thought the label disabled had an expiration date.
Mm-hmm.
And that at any point, God, the universe, were going to be like, dude, we've given you so much chances. Like, it's time to cut it short.
Yeah.
And now that I don't have that label, I don't feel the necessity to run from meeting to meeting or appointment to appointment.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up about 30 minutes earlier than I have to sometimes, just so I can sit up in bed and watch and listen to the news and play on my phone for a little bit and not feel rushed. I take time for these conversations.
Yeah.
I drive a lot. Here in LA, you drive a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to music and just have my own little concerts in the car. And probably after we're done here, another really good friend of mine is coming over to just chat.
Yeah.
I believe a lot in male bonding. That's my decompressing time. Did I answer your question? I feel like I rambled on that one.
Absolutely. And I mean, well, you're in Laguna, you better be spending some time on the beach. That's like it's a paradise
Yes.
in the US. Like, man, that place is amazing. So what you talk about comedy and like how is that you're new into that. I could see it as, like I said yesterday, I've always thought about doing this. And so maybe I'm going to have to stop thinking about it and actually go do it one of these days. But I love that you are doing it. And it sounds like you're having some good success with it and enjoying it. Like, what are some of the biggest things that you enjoy through the comedy? Like, making other people laugh, right? Uplifting others. I'm sure there's some great benefits for you as well. And, is it like, what drives you to do comedy and to take the stage and be vulnerable in front of a bunch of people?
Well, I'm one of those. I'm that friend in the group that always has a wise ass comment.
Yeah.
Like I really get like, does everything have to be so freaking serious? Like there's always room for a fart joke in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I always thought about doing stand up, and I've been a fan of comedy since I was a kid. One of my first influences was Benny Hill. I used to watch Benny
Yeah.
Hill
Yeah.
at night, and a little bit of history back in Dallas. The local channel, no, PBS used to show them unedited
Okay.
at midnight. So I would stay up and watch Benny Hill at midnight.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, if you know who Benny Hill is, now you can understand me a little better.
Yeah.
Fast forward, been doing public speaking for a long time, always throwing a joke, but I wanted to be better prepared. I have I have some big events coming up, and I wanted to be better prepared to tell a joke while I was on stage, while giving out important information.
Uh-huh.
For those of you that don't know, people grasp information much better when they're having a good time than when it's depressing. So if I'm going to talk to you about cancer, AIDS, and potentially dying, what better than to make it funny? You know?
Yeah, right. It makes total sense. Yeah.
So I'm a union actor. I'm part of a SAG, and they had a workshop, and these guys from Cool Beans Comedy came in and did a workshop. I did a joke on anal cancer, and I think I told you the joke yesterday. So So basically, the end of that joke is like, when I got anal cancer, I managed to fulfill one of my childhood dreams. I finally realized what it's like to be a Muppet. And so not everybody got it, which was cool.
Yeah.
But one of the instructors, Matt Moore, came and tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, "You're funny." And he gave me the cards, like, "You need to come and take a class." So I was like, okay. Again, the intention was just take the class so that I can be funny in presentations.
Yeah, right.
Got invited to do an alumni show, did pretty well. Got invited to come back, did pretty well. Got invited to be part of Rebels of Comedy here in LA, did pretty well. Then did a second show, and the TK, who is from Texas also, hadn't seen me perform until the second show, and he was like, "You're funny." It's like, "Why don't you come back to the Ice House?" Now, the important of this is that I took my classes at Ice House.
Okay.
With the Cool Beans Comedy Group.
Yeah.
They've since moved to their own location.
Okay.
But now I'm being asked to come back to that same spot a year later.
That's
to
cool.
perform.
Wow.
And one of the best things about comedy has been, first of all, it's very therapeutic because you get to make fun of your life, and people laugh with you. You get to share a little bit of your story. No matter how tragic it is, there's always a way to turn it around and make it funny, which in turn gives you another glimpse of your life and going, it's not that serious. Life is not that serious. Like if it's, the only thing that comes to mind is like, if you've ever seen salmon going upstream and trying to get upstream, like, yeah, it's a challenge, but just enjoy the water. Go downstream every once in a while and stop fighting so hard. And usually things will work out themselves. And I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday from your story. It's like we try so hard to be so strong and I'm a man. And comedy is giving me a chance to just be stupid and let other people in. I let them look into my stupidity, which allows them to look at their own. And maybe, just maybe, they'll go home and realize that life is not that tough and we just have to enjoy it.
Yeah, I think one of the one of the greatest things about comedians, it's kind of a pass to almost say whatever you want, right? Like, as long as you can, uh, like, frame it up the right way, right? And I think from an audience perspective, it's always it's like the comedians are saying all the things that they've probably thought themselves, but never had the courage or platform to be able to say. And so that's why it's so funny. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not the only one that like has had those thoughts or gone there. And a lot of the stuff is really just quite funny. And a lot of times we just take ourselves way too seriously, which I think, again, when you're looking at being a leader, business owner in your community, in relationships, like, as an advocate for HIV across the country, like you said, levity and laughter and only helps to maybe spread that message and allow people to hear it so that they can actually take it and
Yeah.
put it into play in their life.
Yeah. I was on stage last week and I made a joke. Christian, my partner, uh, wasn't feeling well. He was a little sick the morning before the show. And I made a joke about I'm not a snuggler. I don't cuddle. I'm like, ugh, like, be a man,
Yeah.
handle it. Put some Vaseline on that. Put some Vicks on that. That'll take care of itself. And he wasn't feeling one. He was like, could you just hold me for a little bit? And I was like, okay, fine. So I put the phone down and we're laying in bed and I'm snuggling with him. And I made a joke about like, where would I put my hand? Like, do I pat his back? Do I make him feel better? Do I pat his butt? And I ended up patting him on the head and going, that's a good boy. and then I looked at him, I go, you realize I'm going to talk about this on the
Yeah.
show tonight?
Yeah.
And he was like, of course you are.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, after the shows, some straight guys came up to me and they were like, dude, like so many times I've done that with my girlfriend. It's like,
Yeah, right.
like I'm playing a video game. Do you want to snuggle now? Like,
Yeah,
really?
right.
But going back to the topic of the show, uh, championship leaders or championship leadership, um, I feel like I said this to myself when I came out. I was 17 when I came out, and I promised myself that I was never going to be embarrassed or hide my sexuality because it didn't interfere with my capabilities of doing anything important in life.
Mm-hmm.
When I was diagnosed with AIDS, it's like I'm not going to hide this. It's part of who I am. Live it. When I sobered up, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, keep it anonymous." I'm like, I'm proud of being clean and sober for 12 years. It takes a lot of work, especially when you live in Hollywood and hang out with people in Hollywood. Like, there's always drinks, there's always somebody with drugs, and like you just gotta keep it to yourself. Like, cool. Anal cancer. Like, I know as men we don't want to talk about it, but it's prevalent. Colorectal cancers are there, and if you don't check yourself, um, you'll end up with problems, which is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And then having an ostomy, people don't notice it, and I'm kind of happy because I don't want my presentation card to be a hole in my belly when I show up to meeting. But then you put all those things together. Wow, you put all those things together, man. I'm Superman. But I've always felt a responsibility to myself to show some other guy, and I usually refer to Latinos, but across the board, I want with my, I know it sounds very like who are you? But if the things that I've been through in my life can help somebody else get through them and realize that, going back to labels, that the only label that really matters is the one you put on yourself, then damn it, what a fucking good life. Like, I got an email from a gentleman from London earlier this week who was getting tested for HIV, and in the waiting room was an article that was written about me about a year ago, maybe a little longer, he read that and read my story, and he was like, if Daniel Garza can go through all this, I can get tested.
Wow.
This is not the worst thing. And he wrote me, and we've been chatting back and forth, and I was like, oh man, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then I got an email from another gentleman who's an author, and he's writing he writes gay romance, and he's writing a character who's HIV positive, who's dating somebody who's negative, and how the challenges are. And he saw me in some article and said,
Oh, wow.
and wrote me and said, hey, can I bounce some ideas off of you to make sure that I give this character an accurate life? And I'm like, by all means.
Yeah.
Um, I've gotten emails from young gay kids who are Latino and in a conservative family and don't know how to come out.
Mm-hmm.
People with ostomies now. I'm starting to, because I've only had my ostomy for 3 years. I'm starting to grow in that field too. And then people are
Yeah.
like, hey, how do you deal with it with a partner? I started my own Facebook page called Ostomen. So it's a page for men with ostomies, because
Okay.
we have our own things to deal with. I don't know if I'm probably rambling by now, but
No, it's
um,
great.
I just think that, and you and I chatted about this yesterday, there are, yes, there have been a lot of things in my life that have been challenging and still are. And there's been a lot of walls to jump over. I guess coming from your background, it's like a life boot camp. I'm going through life boot camp right now. It
Yeah.
still am. There's always
Yeah.
something to jump over, climb through, crawl under. But if I can make it, and I know everybody says that, if I can make it, anybody can. Um, but if you're sitting there listening to this podcast and you're wondering, could I ever be a leader? Could I be a championship leader? Could I? Yeah, man. Just
Yeah, absolutely.
look at your life and find the stuff that was really crappy and how you came over it. Share that, and you'll
Right.
realize that people are willing to listen to your story. And I think that I'm hoping that's one of the reasons that I'm on your show, is that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You do, you have an incredible story, and it's amazing to see when you do own that, like you have, like you said, like you mentioned just not that long ago about just owning it, like living it. It is who you are. You're not going to hide from it. And there's a lot of power in that because it inspires others to be able to do the same thing. So as I want to wrap this up and just ask, like, what would be one or two things that you can leave with the listeners to help them move forward in their life?
Oh man, one or two things. Okay. Number one, we are way stronger and way more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. We, I, I learned very early on in my life that when I'm put up against the wall, the first thing I do is find the door to get through it.
Hmm.
I don't have to figure out how to jump over it, how to break it down,
Yeah.
how to dissect it. There has to be a door that I can get through it and make it just a little bit simpler and,
Yeah.
and learn the lesson. So before you make your life decisions, we have a lot of bougie problems. We have a lot of first world problems.
Yeah.
So before you worry that Starbucks didn't get your order right, take a step back and realize that that is not that stop.
Yeah.
Stop. And but the problems that really come to life, health problems, money problems, relationship problems, all those things, you are stronger than the problem and you will get through it. I can't promise you, but I guarantee you that if you just stop for a minute and stop panicking, you will find the door and you will get through that wall. I guarantee you. Second, our minds are so powerful, and I come back to labels, that the label that you choose can make or break who you are to become.
Yeah.
I chose the disability label for 19 years, and I saw through the window what my success looked like, but I was never allowed in there by me. I never allowed myself to get in there. And as soon as that label was taken off, it was like, wait a minute, I have all this potential and I never realized it.
Yeah.
Damn. And my mind, it's, of course, this has only been a couple of months since disability ended. So I'm kind of getting back into it. And it's like, look at all the opportunities that were there. But
Yeah.
because I believed somebody else and didn't have faith in me, I never even tried to get in through the window, if that makes sense. So number one, find the door in the wall. And number two, create your own labels to get you to where you want to go in life.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. What are a few ways that our listeners can find out more about you and what you're up to and what's going on and follow you?
Sure. I'm usually on America's Most Wanted. No, just kidding. Any bathroom wall, you'll find my number. Usually because I put it there. Facebook. I'm big on Facebook. That's where most of my stuff is. Daniel G. Garza. Look me up. On Twitter, I'm under also Daniel G. Garza. Instagram, I am Daniel G. Garza. You can follow the trend there. And then if you want to follow some of my comedy and some of the interviews that I do and some of the shows that I do, you can go to YouTube, Daniel G. Garza.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. I love it. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to do this. And thank you so much. It's been awesome connecting, and we'll definitely stay in touch. But yeah, just thanks for taking some time to be on the Championship Leadership Podcast. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. I hope I didn't ramble too much, and thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great.